I believe it was added to the agenda probably because we updated our templates. And we added the pledge to the commissions as well, so I'm thinking, I think I made it on the list as a just in case, because I wasn't sure when this was gonna go, but I mean, we don't have to, it's at your discretion. So if Mayor would like to skip over it.
Doing well. Calling today's City Council agenda for our special meeting. It is Wednesday, April 30th, 2025, and it is 2 p.m. Please, Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Gregory, will you do the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem. City Clerk, may we have a roll call? Please.
Councilmember Carnevale?
Here.
Councilmember Lamb?
Here.
Councilmember Gutierrez?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregory? Here. Mayor Ross?
I am here. Do we have any changes to our agenda?
I have no changes to the one item, Mayor.
The one item, well, you just never know. If you're going to change one, it might be that one. So would you like to describe the agenda item, City Manager, for our Financial Services Department staff review?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is the last in our series of deeper dives into the staffing and budget levels for each of our departments. I think we started with the first one on February 19th, and here we are on April 30th, completing it. And then, of course, as you know, any feedback received will be incorporated in the budget document, which will be coming to you for its preliminary adoption on May 14th. Kevin.
One minor correction, the last, but also the best. Just remember that.
That's how we do it. It's how we roll.
That's how we roll. So good afternoon, council. We are in the city staff. We are here to talk about the Financial Services Department. And yes, this is the sixth and final with respect to these Wednesday afternoons tied to budget. So let's look at what our department looks like, and this is the org chart of our department. Facilities, finance, risk, and all the various functions, and we will talk about those functions. The department, and look at the history with respect to the numbers, and you might look at 24-25. I just want to remind you that in 24-25, that's when we had a assistant supervisor that we traded in for two facilities maintenance worker ones that year with respect to the facilities maintenance plan. And so that's why that number is 17.5 versus 18.5. You can see that with our proposed budget, we will be at 17, so we have a savings of 1.5 positions. And then tied to the budget book, a different picture of the same numbers. When you see the data from the budget book, you can see how we have it broken down into the Financial Services Administration division to include risk management, but risk management is separate because of the monthly that we do every month for that accumulates up to the 4.3 and the 4.8 that you see. The finance division, the facilities division, and then separate from that, we also monitor the general government. Remember, the general government for the listening audience is that which cannot be assigned to a specific department.
You have this one up real quick. It's dollar-wise, it's not huge, but there does seem to be an increase in the Financial Services Administration between year one and year two of this budget. Are you going to be covering that in the future slide, or?
It's part of succession planning, sir, and I plan to retire. And so it's my
what type of costs are then being rolled in there?
my cash outs.
Okay, so that's really what that is. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And that does not imply that we give you permission to retire.
Well, thank you. So with respect to our organizations, we chose, call it the easy way out, but this is how we are as teams. And so we did, rather than go through position by position and tie back to percentages, we tie back to what we do as a specific team. So in the finance division, you see our breakout with respect to our primary functions. And in the facilities division, you see the breakout with respect to the primary functions. And as I forgot to say at the beginning, questions as we go along or save them to the end, but please feel free. If I'm going too fast, let me know, because there's a number of slides you've seen many times. Although we are not the record for the number of slides. We're only at 62, and 2 weeks ago, the Public Works Director had 76. So he's the winner on the number of slides.
Chicken dinner for everybody.
So risk management, let's talk a little bit about risk management and the functions. So there's 2 slides here with respect to when we think of risk management, we think of those kind of resources that we get from one arm, and that is PIRMA, for the listening audience, the Public Entity Risk Management Authority, and that is the 32-member JPA, or Joint Powers Authority, that we are a member of and have been a member of for a number of years. And these are the general kinds of things with respect to receive from PIRMA. Versus our direct through Alliant, or APIP, Alliant Property Insurance Program. And these are the types of what we see through them from a risk standpoint. On these next 2 charts then break it out into dollars, because we wanted to tie back to where we see ourselves for FY25 and finishing this year, vice the estimates for the next 2 years. So on the commercial insurance policy, you'll see we have a mix, because this last year we actually converted from the Alliant program to the PIRMA program for cybersecurity and crime. And these are the respective money amounts that we anticipate. Ironically, mixed messaging, and you'll find this ironic because on January the 7th, we had our first call with our insurance carrier, with Alliant. That was the day of the Pasadena-Altadena fires, and we had a call at 10 o'clock that morning, and all was looking good with respect to the upcoming year. So we have a follow-up call and engagement with them on June the 6th to see where the numbers are actually starting to come in. During that time, we were educated on the concept, well, which contradicted something we were told 2 years before, and that is, well, sometimes the kinds of things that happen from a commercial standpoint, you're covered there, because when things happen over in the personal lines, that doesn't really impact you. But all those personal lines of what happened in Pasadena and Altadena, we're now learning could impact us. So more to come, but we're hoping that our estimates that we have here will be good for us for the next 2 years. And then on the liability side, all of our liability insurances are through PIRMA. They are through the JPA. And you can see the respective amounts that we have forecasted there.
So let's touch on liability while we're here. There does seem to be some concern or something raised in the public occasionally by a very small minority about public safety liability costs for the city. So these amounts is this the amount for also includes the public safety?
Yes.
And does it include other departments also?
It's the city.
So if there's other errors, other types of liability, professional liability, that's also included in,
Yes.
in this amount. So, and is this amount risen sharply over the number of years, or is this?
It's fair. I mean, and what you can see basically we have a 10% number, which is where we had tied back to in January, and then even further with them. They were actually tying back to 7 or so in January, and we went with 10, and they're tying back to, it looks like it could be more closer to a double digit. We're just hoping it doesn't go too far over with respect to a double digit.
You've lost me here.
Percentage-wise.
Increases we're talking about. Oh,
yes.
Okay. All right. So, and again, you may not have this information in front of you, but have we had multi-million-dollar liability payouts in the last couple of years?
Well, not us, and we'll get into this in a few further slides with respect to our self-insured amount, with respect to what our max is. But there have been some settlements based on different types of efforts that were significant. Ironically, on May 14th, PIRMA is going to be coming forth at the beginning of the evening session and presenting us with an award that ties back to risk management and work that was done in collaboration with the Public Works Department based on an effort. And in the end, That had the potential for being a $15 million impact. And when all was said and done, based on the bonding and everything that was done tied to that, we were able to come in at less than 2. But so that's where, tied to the JPA and being part of the JPA, where once we hit our max, whether it's a 25K max or a 250K max, then the JPA and the insurance is tied back to that.
I see. Okay, and I know this is a budget presentation, not specifically on this topic, but, you know, you do hear concerns that somehow public safety is, liability costs are expensive, and somehow other cities that contract don't pay for that, which we know isn't true because, say, the county has a settlement in the public safety department, they wrap all of their public safety costs together in the contract and then split it out. So it comes out to what's paid per hour usually, typically for public safety service. Yeah, and we don't, of course, do anything that way where we split that out. So I was just trying to get if you have a feel if our public safety departments are costing us high liability compared to what you see in the
We do have significant claims.
Sure, but is that common? Would you?
Well, what's common? One a year?
Right.
You mean,
Let me answer that.
Maybe this is a good city manager question.
This is the well, it's the fourth city I've worked for, but the third where I had knowledge of what went on in terms of insurance and claims and liability and had police and fire departments. And I would say in any city that has both police and fire, simply because that's where the majority of your employees are, your exposure is going to be higher in those departments. I would not say that our experience is out of line for those. And if you look at who you would contract with, Riverside County, if you looked into their insurance records, I'm sure you would find that the public safety departments there, because they're the ones with the most employees, is where the majority of that goes to. I would say you could probably do that analysis for any city and find that to be the case.
Okay, and I guess because when I look at this, to me, although this is significant amounts of money, this doesn't represent to me that the city is having to pay out multi-million-dollar settlements all the time, or this would be much higher because these carriers typically over time recover what they're costing plus more in case there's more in the future. So I guess that's why I'm just trying to get a feel about, because this doesn't seem to be out of line.
it's not out of line, and tied back to the city manager's explanation, which was fantastic with respect to it. But one of the things, when you tie back to percentages and you look at our numbers and you look at 230 FTEs, just from a numbers standpoint, and you look at the police and you look at the fire, we're looking at 140 or thereabouts, and that's an equivalent amount with respect to it. It would border on being a little bit higher, but it's close with respect to our ratio.
All right, thank you, and I apologize, Mayor, I didn't intend to go down a rabbit hole here, but I was just trying to get a feel for how this might.
Coming out. We're
how
coming
this
out
might
of it. We're
compare.
good. Councilmember Lamb.
And my question was just one of curiosity. So there are 32 members in the JPA. So this pooling the resources, are they all municipalities? Is that the common?
They're agencies, counties, like for
Oh,
example,
okay.
Palm Springs Aerial, they are one of the agencies. So and there's a few of the agencies that are cities here in the valley.
Okay.
You can go up into the high desert, Victorville, Hesperia, agencies up there.
All
But
right.
yes,
Okay.
it's a variety.
Yeah, variety. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Please continue.
So accomplishments, and just to highlight a few with respect to, one thing that we didn't have previously was a fine arts policy, and in the last 2 years, we added a fine arts policy. We've established a risk and safety committee, and we've strengthened our liability management strategies to reduce exposure.
Thank you.
Additional goals with respect to that we have, tracking and analyzing risk data, and we now are tying back to trends because a lot of this was in paper form or it was institutional knowledge contained within, and so now we're making sure that we're doing that. We implemented a risk awareness and training program. As I've said before, when we've talked risk management, we've had more trainings that we've been able to offer to city staff that come through the JPA, quite honestly, that come through PERMA, and it's free training. And so we're able to get that out into the world and offer that to our internal staff. And we've tried to tie back to our processes and be more streamlined with our processes. Moving on to the facilities division. The facilities division is responsible for detailed daily preventive maintenance and repairs, obviously. But then also sometimes there's emergencies. And then also one of the things, and we collaborate with the maintenance division over in Public Works on trying to make sure that we do better and are more creative with our landscaping and more eco-friendly. You're familiar with this slide, and this slide ties back to the Facilities Master Plan and the group of assets, the 18 assets that are here. And we've been down this path with respect to, and this created quite a bit of goal-oriented activity for us this past year and accomplishments versus goals for the upcoming budget. So the accomplishments from the Facilities Master Plan are listed here, and we briefed this about 2 months ago with respect to the 22 items or thereabouts that we actually accomplished. And the accomplishments range from the amphitheater to the Fountain of Life, to the Bell Tower, to a number of accomplishments in City Hall, the police department, the fire department at the various stations, whether it's the central station and admin, 411 and 413. The Public Works building and the library. Festival Lawn, Town Square, and Century Park. The reason you see these here is because it ties back to accomplishments that the facilities folks do primarily with respect to facilities. Think of restrooms. And Panorama Park. And one of the things that you see with respect to these last two slides, this goes back to the mantra of wanting to deliver DRD a good, strong product from a facility standpoint when they take over our parks come July 1st. Ocotillo Park and the soccer park. So goals for the upcoming, one of the things Eddie's really good about with respect to, and that is safety training, ensuring that staff, and he collaborates with Gabriella in risk management and making sure that his folks get signed up for any training that's available. Using technology to promote safety, regular inspections of park equipment. Now that we have 4 staff members, facilities is staffed 7 days a week. So we actually have staff on Saturdays and Sundays throughout the year. It really helps out during event season, but it also ties back to being able to go around and inspect the restrooms in the parks and make sure that life is well. And then there are remaining implementation items or recommendations from the Facilities Master Plan. And back on the 9th of April, you saw some of those that are planned for the upcoming 2 years. And they're a reminder here. So these are the work items that we have planned for the budget year 1. And you'll notice the last item is the big ticket item, that we have that spread across between year 1 and year 2. That would come not from the general fund, but from the facilities fund should we need to do all of that recommendation. And then these are the activities or goals for the Facilities Master Plan for year 2.
I don't know what a post-tension tendon is.
Those, if you go over to the parking structure, those in between the posts, those tendons that go from post to post.
And they look like they have, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to fishing. It looks like they have sinkers on them, you know, they're long and then they have a
Yes,
metal. Okay.
from one post to the other. Separate from the Facilities Master Plan, and this is in a different portrayal from a dollar amount, high to low, with respect to the items, the big ticket items on down with respect to what we briefed you all 3 weeks ago with respect to the facilities extraordinary one-time costs. are listed here for year 1 and for year 2. Let's talk about finance. So finance, with respect to it, we actually tie back to 3 different groups of people, and that was portrayed with respect to the org chart at the beginning of the presentation. So you can see them here: payroll, grants, capital projects; vice, bonds, treasury, asset management; vice, daily operations, licensing, and special initiatives. Keep in mind, though, as a team, because members from one group or a manager from one group may be tasking people in another group in coordination with the corresponding manager type of activities, just to make sure, because we do things together, it's not just in silos. Is this my portrayal? And so that's why at the bottom, what you see, not all, but the primary activities that go across the board between the 3 teams. Budget, our financial reporting; procurement, payables, receivables; our audits; and tax administration. Procedures, we have a fantastic policy and procedures document. And that has really come into the new century, because what we had before was 2009, and it was just basic stuff, much of which came from the municipal code. So now we've actually done a great lift on that. Rick has been the spearhead of that in coordinating and working with different members of the team to be able to get that. So these are the broad categories of our policy and of our procedures section. And then on this slide, these are the 19 different policies that we have within financial services. So this is a combined document. We provide this document. It's a living document. It is updated throughout the year, and we are going to be doing interim audit with our auditors starting in 2 weeks. And this is one of our 42 items that we have to provide to them, is the update of this document. And then they can see the changes from what we provided them last year. Oh, I went too fast. So in the finance division, we manage over 50 funds. It looks like this budget document that we have will have 59 funds, the one we'll be bringing to you in a couple weeks. But it all ties back to, in us being responsible and fiscally sound, we pay our vendors, we pay our people, and we do a ton of reporting with respect to our financials. And you'll see a slide upcoming with respect to that. These are our major processes, whether it ties back to the major policy document, that is your policy document, the budget, and the preparation and administration of that. And it ties back to that document. Maybe every 2 years, it's just all of this activity that has been going on for these since December with respect to, in these last couple of months with respect to you all. But it really ties back to the monitoring of it that happens monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, based on the way we receive certain monies, the way we spend certain monies. Yes, there's certain things we're not aware of until 6 or 8 months into the year, because we can then have trends for that fiscal year. But it is really about the monitoring and the administration. And that's what it ties back to. It's not just expenditures. It ties back to monies coming in the door. It ties back to our assets. I mean, when we come to you and we talk to you about equipment, or we talk about vehicles, our buildings, our assets, and then the licensing. We have debt. You all are aware of a lot of debt that we have, but it's not city debt, and we'll have a slide on that later. Bank activity daily and monthly, and the investments that are monitored, and the collaboration between ourselves and our city treasurer. And then our monthly and year-end closings. Major processes, financial statements, reporting requirement, audit materials, as I mentioned, and we'll have a slide upcoming. We have our interim audit, which is a process audit that is in 2 weeks. And we are proudly the process owner of the ERP financial backbone and the various pieces that comprise that financial backbone. So annual filings, this is a list of the primary annual filings that we have. Quarterly and monthly filings that we have. So all is said and done, we do 97 financial reportings in a given year. And we have the numbers broken down by what happens each quarter. That's a lot. Moving on to audit, we have 4 primary activities that happen at the end of the year. We will do that at the end of September, early October. And then late October, early November is typically when we have an agreed upon procedures audit with the Riverside County Transportation Commission on Measure A and/or TDA for the years that we have TDA. And then our state controller's street reporting, that is an audit that is done. And they also not just do the traditional gas tax street reporting, but now underlying in that is the SB1, the Road Maintenance Rehabilitation Act auditing that is done. So those are our 4 primary audits. Our ACFR, there's our timeline with respect to our big financial report, and that's the one where at the end of December you see all of the deliverables that come from our independent audit firm that we update you on the status of our previous fiscal year. Budget timeline for the listening audience, because you've seen this a number of times this budget season. Accomplishments. One of our primary drivers is the Government Finance Officers Association, and we are proud tied to our certificate of achievement for the budget, but also for the ACFR. We're proud that we haven't had audit findings in our letters we mentioned the last 2 years, but we just haven't had audit findings. It's been since the aughts that we've had audit findings. And fingers crossed, we achieved that minimum fund balance reserve of 33%. That is a primary goal, and we brought that to council in 2014 because prior to that, we did not have a minimum goal. With respect to the ERP, we're proud of the accomplishments that we've made, and this is the primary ones, but not the only ones, whether it's training staff, and that's a good thing that we've been able to do over this last year is train staff so that they can inquire against their own accounts and see what their activity is and not just have it force-fed to them. Position budget control, we've been using position budget control, and in this budget, we actually used that. Mallory spent lots of time with respect to setting that up and getting that lift accomplished. As you all are aware, we do electronic timekeeping now, and we do expense reporting online with respect to our employee self-service system. We now do, from cradle to grave, we do all the payroll functions. And prior to implementing payroll in 2022, we outsourced our payroll to a vendor, and we only did timekeeping. The Enterprise Asset Management module is now across departments. We have 5 examples of departments using the EAM. And that was our final lift with respect to the Tyler ERP on the financial backbone side, and we implemented that this year. And the central budget entry so that the departments could actually give us input in the system. That was a first for us this year. You all are aware about the fee studies. We fee studied you to death over the last few council meetings. These are a couple little things, especially the last one, that we're happy to say that after 4 years, we appear to be on the track for closing out all 7 of the pieces of the COVID FEMA reimbursements. It doesn't look like a lot, but we're getting about $250,000 back. It's better than nothing.
We'll take it.
We'll take it. It's a win. And then with respect to Tropical Storm Hillary, the good news is that just in the last week, and I think I mentioned this last week, we actually have progressed on 4 of ours that are in what they call the environmental mode with FEMA. 2 of them have progressed in the last 2 weeks. One of them is a big ticket item. It's the debris removal, and that's at about $2.8 million. So when all is said and done, we just signed off on that yesterday. So it's now in the Cal OES, so we just have a couple more hurdles, fingers crossed, on 2 out of those 4. The other 2 are still in the same state, but they're at least in the environmental land where they're being evaluated. So we're moving slowly but surely, and we meet bi-weekly with our FEMA rep. So let's talk about goals in finance that support overall strategic plan goal C and goal D. Our financial resources are protected through sound financial management, to have a properly implemented and managed budget, to ensure that our financial activities are legal, accurate, and timely, They're accomplished with providing quality financial management services. We're leveraging that backbone, and what you saw at the beginning of the presentation is aligning the staff functions along 3 divisions within finance for effective succession planning over the next 2 years. Examples of performance measures within the Financial Services Department, you can see them here. Another win that we wanted to tie back to a form of savings for you all, in this, with using the central budget entry, we were able to identify and provide justifications like other departments were when we delivered the budget book to you all in mid-March. These are all of our vendors that we use, that we outsource for different types of activities, whether it's not just LSL as our auditors, and that's probably, as you can see, is the biggest ticket item there, but when you add it all up, we were actually able to identify savings of $65,000 in these 2 years.
That's good. For a city that doesn't seem like much, 65,000 is a lot of money.
We'll take it. A position and a half and 65,000.
That's exactly right.
Purchasing procurement accomplishments, centralized purchasing efforts. We're actually using in the financial backbone, we're using the bid module, the contract module, and the purchase order modules. Patrick puts together a bi-monthly status report that's included in the city manager's weekly report. And you see from that with the trends and everything, how we're actually encumbering funds and utilizing the system, we have better data. We have more purchase orders for our big ticket items so that we just don't have to remember them. And that's a good use of the system. Successfully ensured procurement processes are compliant with local, state, and federal regulations. We've increased the number of online locations for us to be able to post our RFPs, our proposals, our RFQs, our quotes, and our IFBs. And from the original work that Public Works Department did on the contract tracker, we've taken that over and we are maintaining that and growing that. And periodically, at least twice a month, Charlie's signing another updated contract within his management, within his authority for contracts that were either expired or they were just month to month or year to year, that we're able to, actually get them with an updated contract. And you see that in that bi-monthly status. Grant management accomplishments, it's been a good lift. Amanda and Rick have established a good, strong infrastructure using the backbone. We use the grants master and the grants manager. And we use the general billing module. We're actually, when it comes time for audit and we have to put our data together, we're not hunting and pecking like we used to in years past. We're pulling the data out of the system and just validating it. And then over the first year, and you just had in the weekly report last week, with respect to the bi-monthly that Amanda puts out on her grants activity of grant applications and grant awards. In the first initial year, we've had over $500,000 of grants based on her efforts in coordinating and working with other departments and supporting them. The main sites, and then over 50 listservs that she subscribes to, and you can see some of the different functions of those listservs of being able to receive data that comes in when something comes out. Not just when it's announced that there's a grant opportunity, but upcoming kinds of activities so that we can be prepared. So let's move on and talk a little bit about the redevelopment and housing. As you all know, as what we knew as the redevelopment agency, the 80% and the 20%, this is the 80%, was all dissolved back in 2012. So we are the successor agency to the former redevelopment agency. Keep in mind, funding is a pass-through. It comes from the State of California Department of Finance to the County of Riverside Auditor Controller's Office to then the city or the agency. And this really ties back to the big ticket debt, the tax allocation bonds. And those tabs in FY26 and FY27, these are the dollars that will come to us as a pass-through with respect to paying that debt off with our fiscal agents, whether it's Wells Fargo or Bank of New York. And here is a list of that debt and when that debt matures. And if you remember the relationship of when this debt matures, as this debt is defeased, And when this debt matures, that increases our coffers with respect to property tax because of the relationship between property tax of what comes to the agency versus what goes to pay off these old bonds. Let's talk a little bit about the Housing Successor Agency. So when you think about housing based on the dissolution, this is the 20% side of the old RDA, we really don't get any revenue in. But there's an opportunity for cash, and we'll talk about that. But we don't have any ongoing revenue streams. We do have a number of loans out there for some of the organizations out there that we've funded over the years, some of which has happened over the last few years, like Veterans Village or Cathedral Palms, but previous forgivable loans that are out there, as long as everything is met, those loans are forgivable, but those are on our books at about $15 million. And it looks like it's a receivable, but we don't anticipate we're ever going to receive anything for those because we expect that those will mature and be forgiven. But we do have liens out there. We have about $4 million worth of liens, and there's a subsequent slide that will talk about the categories of those liens. Because there is a potential, and that's what happens today. The cash that we get into the Housing Successor Agency on an annual basis is a result of any of those liens that are paid off. Few and far between, but we do receive some every year. The overall fund balance for the housing fund is just under $3 million. So go back to the time of dissolution. There were 81 housing parcels that were to be developed or sold. And over the last 12 plus years, there's only 14 housing parcels that remain. 9 across the street, and you can imagine where that is because there's 21 parcels across the street from the bell tower, 12 of which are city-owned land and 9 of which are housing-owned land to the left of the senior center, to the east of the senior center. And then there's 5 parcels up north. Not many of you may realize what these 5 parcels are and what they look like. Councilmember Lamb and I took a trip a couple years ago when we drove up to north of La Posada and hung out and looked over the wall, and I pointed off to the northeast and pointed out to her where those 5 parcels are. And that's what this looks like. So a nice little picture with respect to, you can see that there's 5 parcels that butt up against the railroad tracks south of the 10. And so that is the composite of our 14 parcels, the 9 across the street and the 5 up north. So as a result, we prepare an annual report, and we have the capability to do compliance monitoring on the restricted housing stock. Each rental project we have the agreements for where any subsidies that were provided by the city over the years and the rules that are in place at the time that the funding occurred. And so we can monitor. We have a couple that have a requirement to give us quarterly or annual budgets. There's schedules of rental income, annual qualitative reports, and/or the ability to do a site visit. How many units do we have in our city that we get credit for with respect to the Housing Successor Agency? Over almost 1,800 units. A few of these have additional units within the properties, and that is maybe a manager's unit, but those units are not counted in these numbers. Because on the next slide, you'll see Veterans Village and you'll see 59, but there's actually 60 units. So these are in alphabetical order, these are the housing properties and the number of units. So let's talk about those liens. The liens tie back to the list here. There are 10 different categories. So in our financial backbone, in the housing fund, we actually now have these liens recorded. This was a goal for us that was briefed to you all 2 years ago, that we had this goal to do it. We accomplished this goal in being able to identify what was done here. And London came up with a schema with respect to these 10 projects and being able to get those loans or liens recorded in our financial system. And we have presented that to our auditors. And we presented it to them as a starting point last year in the year-end audit, and they were pleased as punch. So when you look at it, there's 994 units spread across 490 parcels. Keep in mind, when someone came to us with respect to, this is all pre-2012, if they came and they looked for housing assistance, they may have gotten housing assistance for SHARP, the Sewer Hookup Assistance Program, and/or they may have gotten housing assistance for first-time homebuyers. So 327 of those 490 parcels, they participated in multiple programs, usually 2 to 3. We have a few outliers that have 4 or 5. So these are those liens that we talked about earlier that add up to about $4 million. And you can see over in the far right what we have in this chart. This is the spread of the $4 million. So if a and the covenants for these are 15, 30, or 45 years for someone to stay in their property. If someone has a 15-year and they have a 30-year based on the covenant, it's 30 years for the whole kit and caboodle. The higher number overrides. So if they so choose to put their property on market, and it is determined through the escrow process, then the mortgage company will come to us and ask for a demand letter and ask for a payoff. So that is where, when we say that we don't have any revenue that comes in, we don't count that as revenue, but we can count that as an accounts receivable, a lien, that we reduce that and we do get cash. On average, probably $50,000 to $75,000 a year if you look at the trends over the last 12 years since RDA was dissolved. So we wanted to spend the time and explain this to y'all because we've never been able to explain it in quite this detail because we didn't have a handle on it. But now we feel like we have at least we have a machine and we have a handle on it. And then finally, general government. And as we've talked about before, general government, these are the different types of activities that exist with respect to anything that is not assignable to a specific department. For example, a tax sharing agreement. For example, the favorite topic of discussion, the debt service for the city obligation, that pension obligation bond, that exists here. Keep in mind, that is the only, when you hear about Cathedral City and you hear about our debt, this is the only thing on our books that is city debt. The tax allocation bonds from the former RDA and the assessment district bonds, we manage those, we account for those, but we are not liable. They are not city debt. On that note, any questions?
Council?
Any answers?
Yes, ma'am.
So on the Housing Successor Agency, so are, like the first-time home buyer program, that's still a program?
But we do not have a 20% fund. It's a program of liens that are out there from prior to RDA
Okay,
being dissolved.
okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
That was succinct, and I think we're all pleased.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Going, gone.
Don't go too far.
Happy Denim Day.
What that is. The city participated, they've been talking about Denim Day. It started with the police department, has been doing this for years, and it's for sexual abuse awareness, to help raise awareness of sexual abuse that occurs in our community and everywhere, and resources and things that are available for victims so that they don't have to be hesitant to come forward and get that reported. So it's to make people aware, and the police department has been observing this. It's once a year. And actually, Councilmember Carnevale suggested to us that perhaps we should have the entire organization participate in that today. So we put out some information to employees so they would understand the purpose for this. It has links to a website that provides information on Sexual Abuse Awareness Day. And so we are observing that today in honor and in recognition of those, and to try to raise awareness so that we can provide better prevention.
Very good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And Mayor, I do have some public comments for the record.
I was looking at, did you see me looking at saying, was there anybody here? Do we have any
We
public
do have
comment?
two. So the following comments were received for the record, provided to members of the City Council, and made available for public inspection at the entrance. David Coslow asked 11 questions related to the Financial Services Department staff review. Taryn Burns asked 11 questions related to the Financial Services Department staff review. And that is all we have.
Thank you very much. And in this case, guess what? We are adjourned. I love my little thing here. Can we get a photo of everybody wearing jeans? No, not me. I'm not wearing jeans.
Yes, next week and that's at 2 o'clock also, and that is the joint meeting with the Planning Commission and the City Council, and it's related to the zoning code update. And you will be getting a staff report tomorrow, which will provide further detail on what is going to occur during that meeting. That was yeah, we'll clarify that.